Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Juice, your favorite new Denver Broncos podcast. I'm Sayre Bedinger. With me, as always, Brandon Keckler, and we've got an awesome show lined up today. We're going to talk Broncos. We're going to be talking pop culture, some Infinity War, some solo. Broncos OTAs continue on this Friday with the rookie minicamp. Brandon, how you doing today?
I'm doing amazing. And just to let you know, this may not just be your favorite Bronco podcast. We're aiming for this to be the greatest podcast of all time.
Yeah, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, the greatest podcast of all time, the GPOAT. I'm excited for this, Brandon. I think that the first two episodes, we really got our feet wet with some good material. I mean, we had the draft, we had the surprise of Bradley Chubb, we had the ability to kind of go back and recap every Denver draft pick and look at how they affect the storyline. But today we've got something exciting about, three game-changing players, three plot twists is what I'm kind of thinking of them as for the Denver Broncos this offseason. Three players that are coming in and providing some really intriguing change to the team. And I like the names that we picked out. I think that one of them, maybe two of them are going to be obvious, but I think there's a dark horse in there that we're going to surprise some people with. So I'm excited to get to these guys here. But yeah, I mean the Broncos right now. I mean they just released their rookie draft pick numbers, which is another exciting topic.
Let's start there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Some exciting little storylines. I mean, I know they're just numbers, but we're going to be looking at these numbers for a long time. So yeah, there's some ones that you and I were talking about that I'm pumped about.
Yeah, I think it's pretty unanimous between us. The 55 for Bradley Chubb, that was made official on his Instagram. He replied to somebody who commented on a photo. He made that pretty official, and I had to kind of reason with it in my mind because I'm trying to think, okay, who's like solidified themselves in Broncos history as 55, and the only person that I could really think of was DJ Williams. And so I think Bradley Chubb now, probably a decade later, has got a chance to create his own legacy with that number.
Absolutely. And that's what's cool about that one specifically is that we're creating like a potent 55 to where in the future we're always going to think of Bradley Chubb. But then there's some other great ones, like let's start with Sutton. So he's going to make us quickly forget about Latimer's 14, and we're gonna establish that 14 in the way that Latimer should have. We should 14 should be a lock right now from Latimer when we grab Latimer, but now I think that person's going to be Sutton. He's kind of like our second chance that's going to redeem that number, and that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I like that number a lot. I like it because, first of all, I think for me personally, I like numbers in the teens for wide receivers a little bit better than numbers in the 80s. I think the 80s is kind of a classic. You're throwing it back to guys like Rod Smith, Ed McCaffrey, Jerry Rice, even Demaryius Thomas. When he picked that number, that was nearly a decade ago as well. So I like the teens number.
It's fitting better with tight ends these days.
It is. You're absolutely right. It fits better on a tight end to me. And I love the duo that we've got with 14 being Sutton's new number and then 17 being the number that Deshaun Hamilton went to. I can't really think of any 17 that's really been established for the Denver Broncos other than Osweiler, which, I mean.
No, exactly. Let's cleanse the palate.
Exactly.
Let's restore 17 in the minds of Broncos fans. Yeah, I'm liking the 14-17 combination. I feel like that's just a peek into the future right there. There's probably some kind of numerology you can do to figure out like the secrets of the universe with those two.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to look into. Well, they say that if you look good, you play good, and so I like, for me, it's just a clean look to have your young receivers. You've got Sutton at 14, Hamilton at 17 now, and then you've got Carlos Henderson with one of my favorite numbers on the Broncos roster, 11. I love the look of 11 on that Broncos jersey, and then I like the switch for Isaiah McKenzie over to number 16 from 84. 84. That's just a bulky number for such a small player. 16 seems a bit more fitting for him.
And you look ahead, if Isaiah McKenzie pans out, you look ahead about 3 years from now, 4 years from now, and you've got 14, you got 11, 14, 16, and 17 is probably who our four top receivers are going to be. So that's going to be a good-looking team squad. when Swag Kelly's taking us to back-to-back Super Bowls.
Swag Kelly, I love it. Oh my goodness, I love it. Well, before we start talking about Swag Kelly, I think you and I agree potentially the best number that was given out to any Broncos rookie, Josie Jewell.
Yep, we've talked about this player in nauseum, but dude, he's rocking John Lynch's 47 in the middle of the field.
It's beautiful.
So beautiful. And we're talking like we wanted that presence to be that captain, that defensive captain. Mm-hmm. Like him just rocking 47 in the middle. That's the centerpiece we needed.
It couldn't be a better choice for him because I think for me, numbers in the 50s for inside linebackers anymore are a bit overrated. I don't think you need to have that traditional Brian Urlacher 54. I don't think you need to be you don't need to be in that range as a linebacker. I love 54 on Brandon Marshall, don't get me wrong. But I think switching it up, the kind of the new age thing, you're going to more towards the collegiate way, having a linebacker in the 40s. Josie obviously wore 43 at the University of Iowa for the past 4 seasons, but I love the connection. John Lynch at 47. Nobody's really worn that number since John Lynch was here. And now Josie Jewell, arguably the fans' favorite pick of this year's draft, which I love that he's caught on so quickly. I mean, have you been noticing that on Twitter and everything? The people are just latching on.
Oh yeah. They're buying in. And he, he's someone that I feel like he is going to do really well this year. But I think the thing we're looking forward to is him just being that captain in the years to come in the middle. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the most important thing that he brings to the table, in my opinion. And like you said, we've talked about it ad nauseum, is leadership, and it's something that's been desperately needed, but more so than just leadership, because every single player in this draft class seems to exemplify what it means to be a leader on and off the field. Josie Jewell is really that quarterback of the defense, is what you called him, and I think that's the key for him. And John Lynch, I mean, he was the quarterback of that defense back in the early mid-2000s when the Broncos were, they were Super Bowl contenders with John Lynch in that defense. And I think Josie Jewell, while he's not a strong safety, he's going to be able to bring the wood a little bit, just like John Lynch did.
Oh, yeah. And let's talk about another number. Speaking of Super Bowl Bronco players, we got Mr. Fumagalli wearing Cannon Sharp 4 at tight end. Like, talk about bringing back the Super Bowl glory days. I mean, it's like a nostalgic. I'm loving it. I'm loving the balance between the nostalgic returns with the Lynch and the Sharp, and then we got the new ones that are setting the tone, that are like going to plant those numbers in the minds of Broncos fans for eternities. It's going to be great.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the number 84 on a tight end, and I don't think anybody's done that for the Broncos. And correct me if I'm wrong, if you can remember somebody. I don't think a tight end for the Broncos has worn 84 since Wesley Duke, which is a super random name.
No, it wasn't Dreesen, but it was around that time somebody had it.
Oh yeah. No, you're right. It's Jacob Tamme, obviously.
Yeah, it was Tamme.
How did I forget about Tamme? How could I forget about Tamme? He was huge on those teams.
Yeah.
No, it was Jacob Tamme. I stand corrected. So forgive me on that, everybody. Say that one more time.
That was the only one I could think of, was Tamme.
You nailed it. Though. That was exactly it. It was Jacob Tamme. At any rate, I think.
By the way, I'm drinking some delicious peach ginger tea over here, and not only is it healing to the body, but it also cleanses and amplifies the soul. It's kind of like 1/10 of the way to having superpowers, and I'm thinking, that's just a little shameless plug there. We're not going to tell you what the brand of it was because, if you want to sponsor the podcast, that's the entry right there. 1/10 of the way to superpowers, like everyone's going to go buy your tea, like, so just hit us up and we'll hook you up.
I was just thinking that sounds like a really good ad placement right there. It's just something like, you just sneak that right in there. Like, I'm drinking right now a pre-workout drink, but yeah, if somebody wants their name mentioned.
It was absolutely smooth.
Yeah, and this looks like it could be like Michael's secret stuff. It's green. It's got that crazy look. You know what I'm saying? So you can't see this if
you're about ready to Hulk out.
I'm about ready to Hulk out. That's exactly it. That's exactly what I'm about to do. And I think that, you're right. If somebody wants to throw anything our way and just say, hey, you know what? we'll talk about your beverage. We'll talk about your drink on the air. You know, we have no problem doing that. And now we can do that across multiple platforms, Brendan, because we've expanded. We've expanded from not just the YouTube Live. I mean, we're all over the place now.
We're taking over the internet.
Yeah. Yep. Taking over the internet. That's what you got to do. I mean, we want to make sure that everybody who's listening has the opportunity to listen however you want to, or wherever you are. So you can find us on iTunes, you can find us on SoundCloud, you can find us on Spreaker. There's a number of different ways to listen. Or, you know, I still pull up YouTube every now and again and listen to stuff on YouTube while I'm in the car. So any way that you want to listen, you can do that now, and that's exciting for this show. It's a step forward. I think episode 3 is a good point for us to kind of be, launching into this almost a new era already, just a couple weeks in.
We're just shifting eras left and right, here and there. Just changing every couple weeks.
Yeah, exactly. That's what happens when you're progressing. Change happens. Speaking of, Brandon, speaking of change, I wasn't wearing this hat before we started recording, and for those of you listening, you can't see it. It's the Denver Broncos Super Bowl 50 hat. There's an interesting story behind this hat. If we have a second here to talk about that.
Of course.
So what happened with this hat was before Super Bowl 48. Let's backtrack a little bit. Before Super Bowl 48. I got pretty bold, and I was like, I'm buying the hat with the Super Bowl logo on it. I have to have it. I mean, the Broncos are in the Super Bowl. I'm an adult. I remember this. I was a kid when they won it before.
I'm an adult.
I know. Yeah, I'm an adult. I'm going to buy the hat. You know what I'm saying? So I got that hat, and now it's in storage because nobody wants to be reminded of that game.
No.
But
you should have burned
it. And I should have burned it. I should have burned it. But it serves as a great reminder of what should have been. That was a great Broncos team, but I really struggled when I was looking to buy this hat because I was thinking, do I want to buy the Super Bowl 50 hat before the Broncos win the game? Because, what happens if they lose the game? But then I thought to myself, you know what? No, they're going to win the game.
Yep.
They are going to win the game, and sure enough, they won the game. I pretty much didn't take off the hat for an entire year, so I had to bring it back for this episode because I feel like this is a turning point for the show, for the juice.
We're going back to the Super Bowl.
We're going back to the Super Bowl, and it starts, I think, with some game-changing, plot-changing moves made this offseason.
Absolutely.
And you and I narrowed it down to 3 players. I like the list that we came up with.
Mm-hmm. It begins, of course, as is to be expected, with Dr. Case Keenum, who's coming in and changing the face of our offense, and I'm loving that. And we got to start there. There's no other way you can talk about the storyline changing than who we've got under center.
I agree completely, and I love that you call him Dr. Case Keenum as an allusion to.
I don't know where that came from, but I feel like he's got a PhD and about ready to win this freaking Super Bowl.
Yeah, he. I mean, to me, Case Keenum was a bit of an underwhelming, secondary option when you're talking 5 months ago when we're like, all right, the Broncos are 5-11, they're terrible. Here's all the options that are available to them, and you're looking at Kirk Cousins, and some people are talking about Eli Manning being released, and then you look at the draft class with all these big names, and then there's Case Keenum, the guy who led the Vikings to the Minneapolis Miracle, and on the one hand, I'm like, okay, he had a great season. I can't lie. I remember watching him on Thanksgiving and thinking to myself, holy cow, what happened with Case Keenum? Where did this guy come from?
Yeah. And he's just quietly kind of flying under the radar. And, I love how it's just very seldom mentioned that it's he's already brings them better quarterback play than they had in Super Bowl 50 and in the past couple of years. And with everything else we've done to improve across the board, it's just I think our team as a whole is absolutely flying under the radar.
I think so too, and I love that the flying under the radar theme really starts at the quarterback position because Case Keenum is still being doubted. I mean, he's making $18 million this year, and he's still being doubted. And, you know, some of that is for good reason. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's had one great season in his career combined with, you know, a few other average seasons. But at the same time, like, I don't think a lot of NFL fans realize, like, players are allowed to improve as they get older. I mean,
Absolutely.
It's what a novel concept that somebody would be able to play well as they approach the age of 30. And I think with quarterbacks anymore, they seem to be getting better as they get older. I mean, the exception is obviously Peyton Manning, who physically wasn't really able to get better as he got older. But, like, look at Tom Brady. I mean, physically he stayed about the same, but mentally he's so much sharper that he's just able to dominate games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you've got him being better at the quarterback position, and then just all those other things that he's bringing to the table, all of those other intangibles as far as giving our team a leader that they can get behind and that they can get excited about. Stepping under the umbrella of Case Keenum and who he is as our centerpiece of our offense. I love that. I love how excited our team is. I love how everybody around is buying into that energy and is catching that fire to where he's going to go in there and he is going to implant himself as our leader. And it's not going to be in this kind of like softer way that Trevor did, or this way that Paxton has shown he's enabled to so far. I really, it is going to harken back to, no, he's not Peyton Manning, but he's going to go in there and he's going to establish himself as that just leader of the team that we've needed and haven't had in the past few years. And I just think that's going to do wonders for our offense figuring out what their identity is, and that this offseason we're going in and actually knowing who our quarterback is and not having the controversy and not having the shuffle of figuring that out, that we're going to have, barring injury, the same guy that's going to be leading our team in an offense that we're building around him from square one. As even last year when there was a competition between Paxton and Simeon, it's like, okay, well, whoever wins that offense, it's going to be drastically different of how we execute it, depending upon who's leading it. Whereas we're going in with Case and Musgrave, since we grabbed Case, he's been able to start designing what he wants this offense to look like since we got him. So it's like we're going to already day one hit the ground knowing what our offensive identity is and what strengths we're going to play on.
Gosh, those are some really great points. And I think what you said about looking back at that 2015 season with the camaraderie of this Denver Broncos team, one of the biggest things for them was just knowing that they had a leader in Peyton Manning that could get them out of situations, whether it was by using his arm or his mind or whatever it was. I mean, Peyton Manning was so physically limited, but you saw how that team responded when Brock Osweiler was benched in that Week 17 game against the Chargers and Peyton Manning came back in. I mean, it was like they had acquired.
Yeah, I saw a link on YouTube yesterday that was like, it was an NFL Films thing about when Peyton came back in, the return of Peyton in Week 17 of that game. I didn't watch it. I wanted to watch it. I shot it over to my watch later. But that's cool that it was such a significant moment. The NFL Films did a little chapter on it.
It was huge. I mean, it was at that point in time, it was what we're talking about today. It was the plot twist that team needed, because sure, they ended up winning that game despite all the turnovers in the first half against the Chargers. But I think something interesting, just an interesting wrinkle that Case Keenum brings to the table here. A lot of fans are kicking this back to, okay, now we can be like we were in 2015. I'm thinking it's going to be a little bit more like 2012. And I'll tell you why, is because I think that Case Keenum brings not only the element of leadership and stability and consistency that the Broncos need, but he also elevates the level of play at the quarterback position. I mean, if you're talking back to 2015, the quarterback play hasn't gotten any worse since 2015, in my opinion. I mean, Peyton Manning was terrible that year. I mean, he should have been benched if not for injury. And so I'm looking back at that 2012 squad and an even better defense where Peyton Manning was still playing well. He had the leadership factor as part of his game. And then at the same time, that defense, with the two edge rushers in Von Miller and Elvis Dumervil, Derek Wolfe was a rookie. The secondary was improving. It still had, Champ Bailey was still playing at a high level. I don't know. I mean, this team reminds me a little bit more of that 2012 team. What would you say to that?
I would say that's absolutely true. There's I don't know necessarily if we're gonna break any point scoring records, but
Right.
as far as okay, so this is a good segue into the dark horse as far as what I was thinking. I
Mhm.
think the place that we've maybe improved the most this team is what we're going to be able to do in the passing game in the middle, whether that's through the slots and through the tight ends. I think
Mhm.
that may be like the most noticeable change we see with our offense. Obviously, besides locking down quarterback, but I think what we're going to be able to do in the middle of the field, and especially with how we haven't had slot receivers and we haven't had solid pass catching tight ends, I think that is just an underrated, massive upgrade. And it's not just Hamilton working the slot. And it's going to be some Sutton as well because of the fact that he's not going to be playing as much on the outside right away. And then with our tight ends, hopefully stepping up, and the young one that we got is my dark horse candidate, and it's Troy the Phantom Finger Ferngully. Boy, I'm telling you, like, I am so excited about this, and that's even with the assumption that Jake Butt is going to be the starting tight end. I think the defenses, okay, they're going to have to put their best athletic linebacker or safety on Jake Butt.
Mhm.
And Fumagalli is going to be in there because he was in a run first offense at Wisconsin.
Mhm.
That was the number one thing he did through college was improve as a blocker in a run first offense. And there was something I was watching, they were saying he's got like sneaky power, which I just love that. He
Yeah.
uses his hands well, not only catching the ball, but also in pass protection. So, or run blocking, whatever. So I'm loving Troy Fumagalli, who, of course, the whole storyline of the 9 fingers, but he catches like he's got 11 fingers. So
Yeah.
I'm loving that because I think you're going to have to put your number one defensive guy covering the tight end on Jake Butt. And then what's that going to open up for Fumagalli in the middle in these short routes? What are you going to do? You're going to have to put your second best guy
Mhm.
on him. We're talking about a guy in Wisconsin that was often against the best pass coverage guy on their defense, period.
Yep.
Now, what are you going to do? You're going to not cover all of the other plethora of wide receivers we have, plus Jake Butt, and plus a running back in the backfield. It's like what we have so many tools to play with, and what we're going to be able to do with the combination, I think, of Hamilton, Butt, and Fumagalli in the middle is going to no one's talking about that as much as I think they should. And I'm so excited about what he's going to bring. He's a leader. He's a very fun guy. He has fun playing the game of football. He's a hard worker. He's a team player. I got some notes I was writing down, but he's getting me excited. Like, not only, I think the 84 thing just really kicked this into a high gear to where I'm like
Yeah.
loving the potential of what our tight ends are going to do in this team in this offense. But he drew the best pass coverage guy. He's going to get maybe the 5th or 6th best pass coverage guy in this offense. And I mean, that's where it's like, I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do. He was the best weapon that Wisconsin had, wide receiver or tight end. So what's that going to be like in our offense? I'm excited about that a lot.
Yeah, and to your point, I wanted to look up where he was drafted just to see Fumagali's best game, and in my opinion, I mean, I'm not trying to be a homer with this. Don't even take it that way. Maybe the best game film of any tight end in this year's draft was Troy Fumagalli against Western Michigan in their bowl game after the 2016 season. So it was his redshirt junior season where he made that ridiculous one-handed catch that looked like he said, go, gadget arm, and he reached out with his left hand. Dude, and that's the hand that has 4 fingers.
Exactly.
I mean,
hey, you know what? One of the coolest things I heard about him is he was like, if I could have a 10th finger, I wouldn't even want it.
Yes.
I'm like, yes. I love it. He doesn't even need it, man. He catches like a beast with 4 fingers. Like, That's crazy. I love it.
It's amazing. I mean, you think about it, and I like for me personally, like I think about how I do things with my hands and how my index fingers are so critical to what I do, and especially because I played football in the day. I've played catch, all that good stuff. I use my index finger to trap the ball. Like they tell you to catch like this, and like but you know what? I mean, honestly, he's almost got a bigger trap. Like I don't even know what you
Yeah.
call that. He can trap the
Yeah.
ball with a bigger length in there, but it's just cool, man. It's cool. It's cool that he's able to play the position that he does. Like you would think, growing up playing football, that somebody like Fumagalli who's missing a finger, they're like, oh well, you shouldn't be playing a position where you have to catch the ball regularly. Like he's just like, yeah, right. Like I'm playing tight end and I'm going to be really, really good at it. And to your point, what you were saying about the best coverage guy getting on Fumagalli, in that Western Michigan game, they sicked Darius Phillips, their top cornerback, one of the best cornerbacks in this past year's draft. They sicked Darius Phillips on Troy Fumagalli, and he still couldn't do anything because Fumagalli's catch radius is ridiculous. He's 6'6".
He's so good at catching away from his body. I love it.
Yes. That's another aspect that's been missing from the Denver Broncos offense. Like you talk about the middle of the field, that's huge because on third down and in the red zone, they need that guy, that presence that can make tough catches, contested catches in the middle of the field. But they also needed guys that could go up and go get the ball, like make a big play downfield, go up and win that jump ball, go up and take that ball away from a defensive back. Fumagalli can do that.
He's a good route runner. He's got great hands. He catches well away from the body. And that's where it's like I'm looking at – this is all assuming that Jake Butt is going to step up this year and be who we wanted him to be.
Right.
But I just think that, like, you look at how much they just locked in on him at Wisconsin, and he was just that safety blanket. You obviously want Case to have that, and he's not only going to have it with Jake Butt, but I feel like there's just going to be this, like, short yardage, clutch third down player that Case is going to know he has in Fumagalli. And that's with Butt and that's with Hamilton. Like I think that maybe next to quarterback and maybe more so than quarterback, slot and pass catching tight ends and what we're going to be able to do in third down through the air. That may be the most improved part of the Denver Broncos offense in 2018.
I completely agree. I think that the thing that you improved with Case Keenum, you improved getting a quarterback that, first of all, excels under pressure. But second of all, you need to be able to recognize those players that are, even slightly open on third down. Like it took Trevor Siemian way too long to process who was open, or it took Brock Osweiler way too long to process who was open. And the same for Paxton Lynch. Case Keenum knows that he can throw guys open. Like you can throw it up in a tightly contested situation to Troy Fumagalli, and he'll come down with the ball. You saw, half of Case Keenum's throws in Minnesota this past year, it felt like, were just throws where he was like, all right, I know Adam Thielen's going to come down with this ball, so I'm going to throw it up.
Go get it.
Go get it. And the Broncos have go-getters now, and I love that you brought up Fumagalli because he's a go-getter. He's going to go get the ball, and he's going to become that third down asset, that red zone asset that the Broncos absolutely have desperately needed.
And I think we could have said Josie Jewell, we could have said Hamilton. I think they're going to play huge roles in the future, and they're going to play roles this year. But I feel like even from week one, having Butt and Fumagalli at tight end is going to be something you're going to see from start to finish this season.
Mm-hmm. And for me personally, I haven't given up on Jeff Hireman. I think he's going to be a deep threat at the tight end position, but he's just there's something with Hireman that doesn't get me quite as excited as Butt and Fumagalli. I mean, Hireman has had 18 catches the past 2 seasons. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. But when you remember that Indianapolis game last year where he caught that 54-yard touchdown pass and stiff-armed a guy into the ground, that's the kind of player that I want Hireman to be. It's like, okay, you bring out these 2 tight end sets and you match up Hireman in the slot against a smaller defensive back, you just let him go. And again, let him go get the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And so having that great problem of having 3 really solid tight ends. I love that Fumagalli went into Wisconsin as a walk-on, and there was 11 other tight ends. and he didn't care, and he became their starter. And I think he's going to come into this one with 4 other guys, and he's going to at least be number 2 week 1.
I love it. I agree with you. I think his ability to block stood out to me on tape, and I'm sure the Broncos thought so too. He's also got a great connection. I mean, we haven't touched on this yet. His coach at Wisconsin, Paul Christ, his brother is the Broncos tight ends coach, Jeep Christ.
Former Niners offensive coordinator?
Yep, former Niners offensive coordinator. Yep, exactly. So they're going to be able to find ways to get him involved, and he's got the connection to the coach. They work together at the Senior Bowl. We're going to get our first look at him hopefully tomorrow. Hopefully the Broncos will post some highlights or, like you were talking about, going incognito. I mean, there'll be a fly on the wall.
Now, those of you can't see me, I got a new look. It wasn't necessarily intentional, but I got a new look. I kind of look like Captain Keck Sparrow. Got a little pirate. Paxton Lynch is probably my Bronco doppelganger. So, I mean, if I could find a way to, get a little bit taller or a lot of bit taller, I might be able to kidnap Paxton and impersonate him at rookie minicamp and maybe get some behind-the-scenes exclusive footage. But, we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that plays out. Well, we talk about Troy Fumagalli being that guy that can be a difference maker on third down and in the red zone, or just in general at the tight end position that the Broncos have lacked over the past few years. How about the guy that's going to be stopping the tight end? How about the guy that's going to be preventing those third down conversions that make you want to rip your hair out or make you throw your hat at the wall?
Who's on that guy? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Who's covering the guy? Who's covering the running back for the Patriots? Why is nobody ever covering the running back for the Patriots? It always seems to happen against the Denver Broncos where we have this, we just have this weakness that we're just like, well, yeah, the Broncos just aren't good at covering tight ends. And that's been a problem for a decade, I feel like. I mean, I don't know how long it's actually been since we've excelled at covering running backs and tight ends out of the backfield, but it's consistently one of the most frustrating things to me.
And not only his I think Simmons been getting better at or helped that to improve that as far as his pass coverage, but we brought in a guy who's going to be able to do that, I think, and change that from a weakness to a strength.
Exactly. And it's the third plot twister, the third story changer, the third game changer for the Broncos. And this is a guy on the defensive side of the ball, Sua Cravens. I mean, when you look at what the Broncos invested in him, they traded a 4th and 5th round pick this year, and I think they traded an additional 5th round pick and swapping some picks in there with the Redskins to get this guy, former 2nd round pick. And I've heard from a number of different people that the Broncos had Cravens graded as a 1st round player from the class of 2016 when they took Paxton Lynch and they took, like you mentioned, Justin Simmons. They took Adam Gotsis that year. Obviously, they weren't able to get Cravens in the draft, but now they've got him, and it's really interesting what he brings to the table because he's not a traditional safety to me. He's a guy that you match up on players, whether that's as a nickel defensive back, whether it's as a matchup, to cover a Gronkowski type or to cover James White out of the backfield. Those type of players, I think he can cover a number of different guys because he's got quickness, he's physical, he can play in the box, he can blitz, he can do a number of things for this defense. A lot of people wanted to pay
him as the Patriot killer.
I fully agree with that, and I hope that he really embraces his role as an anti-Patriots player with the Denver Broncos. And speaking of, the Patriots aren't on the schedule this year. Did you know that?
Well, we'll beat them in the playoffs, but yes.
We'll beat them in the playoffs. I agree. Yeah, they are on the schedule because we're playing in the playoffs against the Patriots. But I was blown away by that when I was looking through the schedule again.
Finally,
I was like, man, I know.
Like a decade since we haven't had to play the Patriots in the regular season.
It feels like it's been forever, but that's because the Broncos and the Patriots were pretty consistently there for a while, finishing first place in their division. So, and then they would obviously play again in the playoffs and whatnot. And so it's just.
And last year
we played
great because finally we weren't number 1 for the first time in a while, and then we just happened to be playing their division last year.
Right, I know. And what are the odds? What are the 100%? Apparently, the odds are apparently
right
100% in favor of that happening, but. I love the pickup of Cravens. I love what he's going to bring to this defense. And honestly, the dude might be the best follow among the Denver Broncos players on social media.
I love it. I love from day one his whole new world. Just listening to Aladdin, looking out the window like at Green Horizons. Like, I love it. I love it.
It was amazing.
For a magic carpet ride and show me the world.
I'm with you. You know what? One of my favorite things was he before he came into town for his press conference, he went to like a Lids or a Hat World or something, and he picked up like a 47 brand Denver Broncos hat as though they weren't going to just give him whatever he wanted.
Right.
Like he just went and picked up his own hat and wore that to his initial press conference. Like this guy is awesome.
I love it. That's so awesome.
I can't wait. John Elway talked last year about wanting players who want to be Denver Broncos.
Absolutely.
Anybody embodied that more than this kid?
Yeah. Well, and set him free from frickin' Washington. Goodness me.
Yeah.
The energy he feels. He's a defensive back coming to play with the no-fly zone. And speaking of which, connecting back with our number conversation, he is wearing number 21 this year. And I love that because I feel like this is maybe, I don't know, people might get upset at this. Definitely probably an unpopular opinion. Give me the young 21 over the old aging 21 that we had. I think that Craven going forward is the addition to the no-fly zone that we really need. And of course, we're going to have to replace Talib's value. That's all to be determined as far as what Roby does and whether we can replace even Roby's role from there. But I love Craven's coming in. It's like we didn't lose the 21 in the no-fly zone. And
that's right.
Got younger at 21 for the no-fly zone. I'm loving it.
I love it too. I think it just brings it's just fresh. It's an indicator that the Broncos aren't trying to live in the past. They want to move forward to the new. They gave Talib the opportunity that he wanted, but they brought in a guy from, they traded Talib to Southern California, and they bring a guy who's from Southern California, not with the Redskins, but he's from there. They bring that guy back into town. He had to go out of his way to get the number because, speaking of all the number situation here, so Tremaine Brock, the cornerback that the Broncos signed in free agency, initially picked number 24. And I made a tweet about that initially when I saw it on the roster. I was like, Tremaine Brock he's listed as number 24 on the Denver Broncos roster. And then I started getting all these replies and stuff on Twitter, and I'm sure people were hitting up the Broncos and all that stuff. And then like literally that same day, they're like, yeah, he's switching to number 21. So,
no. Yeah, especially as a corner. Like I've played in my Madden franchise. I had a guy a couple Maddens ago that I loved playing with, a running back that was awesome, and I had him at 24, and that was cool. But we're not having a cornerback as number 24. It's just not happening. Champ Bailey is always going to be 24, officially or unofficially retired.
I agree, and isn't that crazy that the Broncos have basically unofficially retired that number? Like, nobody has worn that number since Champ Bailey left, which, that's only been 5 years, but, that's a lot of roster turnover over the course of 5 years. You're talking about new defensive backs coming in, new running backs coming in, a lot of new players coming in that would probably wear that number. Like Tremaine Brock probably wasn't even really thinking about, well, I'm desecrating Champ Bailey's number, but he was probably just thinking, 24 is available, I'll take that. No. When you come to Denver, and it's the thing that's crazy to me is like 30, 80, 87, 27, even 47 now. All these numbers that were worn by 84, all these numbers that were worn by legendary Broncos, they get kind of recycled through history. Like, we're talking about Terrell Davis, a Hall of Famer. Number 30 is being worn by Jordan Moore right now, which, no offense to Jordan Moore, he hasn't played it down in the NFL. So for number 24 to get that kind of respect, it's crazy.
And I'm thinking, so one of the number things, by the way, we got Freeman at 37 and we got Williams at 36, which are just two ugly numbers.
They are. They're ugly.
Maybe we lose more. Maybe we, some of these other guys get knocked out, and then we get some number upgrades. Because I'm liking Freeman. I love the idea of Freeman as our bell cow. The horse cow back is Jim Harbaugh.
Horse cow. I like it.
That's Aldrin's our buddy in our fantasy football league is
Yeah.
Horsecat from Jim Harbaugh's legendary press conference.
That's
I love
amazing.
that. I love Freeman there, but 37 as our franchise running back, like
No.
change your number.
I could see Freeman ending up on 30. I think
Yeah.
I think that would actually be pretty cool. For him to work.
I got Christian McCaffrey as 30 in my Broncos match.
I know. He looked great in number 30, man. He wore that jersey.
Yeah.
And now the Carolina Panthers they have the running back duo that I was personally, hoping for last year at this point.
CJ and Christian, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Just crazy.
So that's our three. We've got Case, we've got Cravens, and we've got the Phantom Finger Ferngully, Troy Fumagalli.
Phantom Finger Ferngully.
Telling you,
that's amazing.
I'm excited about those three. I think those are going to be some serious plot twists, some major stories. One unspoken, and two that are coming in that are feeling major needs. Major. So how about Marvel's Infinity War?
I was just thinking about it. And we warned you. So if you didn't listen to the previous episode, we warned you that it was going to be, this episode was going to be filled with some spoilers.
So this is your chance. You got
this
about
is your
10
chance.
seconds.
Yeah.
You gotta go. We might talk a little bit more Broncos at the end, but pretty much this is Infinity War now. So you may need to come back and check this out later once you've seen it if you don't want to be spoiled, because your world's about to get rocked if not.
Yeah, I agree. You've been forewarned. And so, Brandon, this is what I've been thinking. I'm thinking the headline of Infinity War is Thanos single-handedly destroys the Avengers, right?
Well, and I don't know if you caught this, but it was actually foreshadowing the Broncos defense in 2018. And how we're going to obliterate half of the NFL's offenses with the snap of a finger.
That's a great point.
Absolutely. And I'm talking, we got 13 teams we play in the regular season, right?
Yep.
And then assuming we're going to get that first round bye and then hit 3 teams on the way through the Super Bowl, including that's 16 out of 32. So we're literally going to create balance in the universe by obliterating half of the NFL's offenses.
Yep, I agree. Who would you say is the most surprising character to die from that movie?
Well, I don't know about surprising, but I'll tell you the one that just rocked my freaking world, and it's obviously Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So hold on. Let's set the stage, though. So we got this movie that comes out, Avengers 3, which I just want to lead in with. I love this movie thousands of times, obviously exaggerating, more than both Avengers movies combined previously. I'm not a big fan of Avengers 4 2. They were cool popcorn flicks, but ultimately I felt like they were underwhelming. They leaned a little bit too much on the cheesiness of comic books that is not my favorite. And then Winter Soldier comes along, and you've got the guys that wrote the first Captain America, but then you bring in this director combo of the Russo brothers, and they'd never directed an action film ever. They had done episodes of Community. They had done maybe a comedy feature. They were just these smaller directors. And they came on and they did Winter Soldier was their first action film of their career, and they just absolutely knocked it out of the park. You can take that movie so serious as this political thriller and not just this cheesy comic book movie, but it carried a serious weight and it changed the game in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I love that. And then they carry that forward into Civil War. So now you have the same writers that did Captain America 1, they then did Captain America 2, and then they did Captain America 3 with Civil War, and then it was the Russo brothers' second film. And it was almost an audition for what an Avengers movie would be like if they were to handle it. And they knocked Civil War out of the park. In my opinion, Civil War was also a better Avengers film. Then it gets announced that they're going to be the ones, that writer duo and that directing duo of those brothers are going to be the ones handling Avengers 3 and Avengers 4. And from that announcement, I was stoked. I felt like we were going to see the Avengers films that we deserved years ago when that was announced. So having seen it now, they came in, and I think the thing that blew me away the most, I knew it was going to be good, but they just made an Infinity War movie where Thanos was the protagonist.
Yes.
For those that don't know, protagonist and antagonist is not hero and villain. It's the chief desire that you follow through the movie is the protagonist, and the antagonists are the opposing desires against that chief focused desire. And Thanos' desire to balance the world, and for very clear motivations, that he really felt that the universe was out of harmony and that this balancing needed to occur to help the world out, to stabilize the world. And that he came in as this protagonist, and his goal was at the forefront, that I have to gather these Infinity Stones because I have to help the world. And our Avengers, Marvel characters, were the antagonists. They were the ones trying to stop him. They were the hurdles that he had to climb over. And he establishes his motivation very clearly. I want to balance the world out, and then I just want to rest, and I want to look out at the sunlight. And in the end of the movie, he gets the Infinity Stones, he snaps his fingers, he kills half of the universe, including most of our beloved Marvel characters. And then he sits and he just looks out at the sunset, and he sighs and he just rests. We watched a complete arc from establishing desire to achieving the desire and conquering the antagonists. And it was Thanos. They chose to make Thanos the main character of Avengers 3. And that is just, I was not only blown away with how they handled his character, but just that how bold that decision was to make him the focus was absolutely beautiful.
It was. And I think for me, one of the points of the movie where I kind of realized, I mean, you kind of figured it out as the movie was going along, but where you really realized that he was the protagonist was where he went and he took Gamora and he killed her.
Oof.
And that was the point at which I was like, okay.
How bad did you feel for him doing that? You should be hating him. And it's interesting how much you empathize with him.
I was just gonna say it was empathy for the situation. Like, he felt like he had to do anything and everything that he could, including something like that, in order to achieve, like you said, that peace that he's looking for. It was a crazy moment in the film for me to just, and in the theater, I mean, you can just hear a pin drop at that moment because they're like, oh, there's no way he's gonna do it.
Everybody left that movie quiet.
Yep.
Just like almost like they'd been traumatized or something. Like they were just processing and like really heavy. And I love that. I love that it didn't have to end on this like cookie cutter Disney positive ending, you know, but they just really just wrecked our world in a way that, like, even just seeing the despair of Captain America as he's there, like, speechless, you know, over Bucky's ashes.
Yeah.
And he's like, we lost. We failed. We just, half the world just half the universe just got obliterated. And we stop it. And I think that's where, to go back to answer your question, Spider-Man's death was so powerful to me. And I've read that it was his spider sense that was freaking out. And that's where you got him processing the death, where a lot of them just faded out. And Spider-Man was like, I don't want to go, Mr. Stark. I don't want to go. And like that, there's just that longer experience with him going through the process of dying. It was like his spider senses were tingling and telling him that he was going to die. And Tom Holland improv'd that scene. He improv'd it. He just, like, that was something where he just interpreted how Peter would react and nailed it. And I remember, like, my little sisters next to me were crying. And we know Spider-Man's the first post-Avengers 4 movie. We know he's coming back. And that's what's so crazy about how well executed that was, is you felt that despair despite all these guys being on contract and, you know, there's no possible way they're actually going to leave them dead. But it just, and then for Peter to apologize to Tony as his last words is to say, I'm sorry. If he let him down, that just shows you the character of Peter Parker. And that's why he's my favorite superhero. It's not because of his Spider-Man powers, but it's because who Peter Parker is.
I found myself really connecting with this version of Spider-Man a lot more than the previous ones. I think you're right. Tom Holland is nailing it. He's the perfect, he's almost like us, as if like a fan of the Denver Broncos were to be able to go and play for the Denver Broncos. Like, he's a fan of all these superheroes, and he gets to go be with them, and he never changes.
That moment where Stark kind of touches him on the shoulders and goes, "All right, you're Avenger, bud," like, and walks off. Peter's like, and then he goes, "Oh my gosh!" And he straightens up, he gets stiff, and he looks forward. He lifts up his chin, and he knows it's like he goes from boy to man in how he reacts. First, the boyish reaction of, "Oh, so cool! I'm going to be a part of the Avengers," which you expected, but then he just straightens up and he's like, Like, I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to be an Avenger. I realize the responsibility, and I'm not going to treat this as any less than the awesome, noble, opportunity that he's getting. I love that tiny little moment. It was so good.
Yeah, it was. And there were a lot of those tiny little moments throughout this movie, and gosh, like you said,
crossover.
It did.
Crossover. That's what I loved. Like, it felt like these different issues were all kind of together. Like, it did seem like it was kind of all over the place as far as there's a lot of different things happening in a lot of different places, some stronger than others. But when is that ever any different than any comic book crossover event? And when you're reading them, is you've got all of these separate pieces that kind of come together for this whole. And that's where, especially when you're balancing the storylines and the tone of a lot of different kind of films, that you could put the Guardians in with Captain America, which I think are kind of the opposite ends of the spectrum, as far as maybe Ant-Man would be the most kind of funny, but Guardians as well, just being this really funny, lighthearted kind of thing. And then Captain America's films, which have been super serious, and for them to be able to coexist, I thought was just very impressive.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it's worth seeing multiple times. It's worth dissecting and really getting into the like you're talking about, the details of what they're doing, and just every individual character is being extracted and developed throughout this series, I feel. And I think this one did the best job of really getting the viewer to connect with the characters on screen, and not just in a cheesy comic book. Right, let's see the action, let's have a resolution, and let's go on to the next. This is really, you're connecting.
Funny and serious was so good.
Yep, it was perfect. And speaking of funny and serious, maybe no character in the Star Wars galaxy embodies that better than Han Solo.
Absolutely. And I know we talked about this at the end of the last episode, but I'm getting to be so pumped about this. I don't need it to be a perfect movie. I just am expecting it to be a fun movie. I'm excited that we get to see those moments on screen that we've known about in Star Wars lore. I want to see how he gets the Falcon. I want to see him clash with Lando. I want to see that. Like, I want to go into the old trilogy later and see, like, Lando and Han scenes, and I want them to almost have, like, a new light to them. Because you saw their camaraderie as young men, just that kind of civil rivalry that they are going to establish and have with Donald Glover, who's just killing it right now.
Yeah.
Whether it's Atlanta on FX or Childish Gambino and his, kind of game-changing music video that he just put out. Now he's going to be Lando Calrissian. It's like he's film, television, and music, like, on top of each of those worlds right now, in my opinion. So it's blowing my mind.
Yeah, it's really cool. And like you said, these movies that are kind of going back and connecting the dots for the Star Wars universe, they really provide additional context that we need as the viewer. I mean, a lot of things that people are confused about in Star Wars, they're going back and connecting those dots. I mean, with Rebels, with Clone Wars, with Rogue One. I love what Rogue One did, because as a kid, like, this may be blasphemous, but Episode 4 as a kid wasn't the most exciting Star Wars episode to me. Like, I loved the prequels as a kid just because it was action-packed and all that stuff. But now, looking at Episode 4 through the lens of, okay, this is what happened in Rogue One, this is what happened in the Clone Wars, I love the context that it provides. Like you said, you see those moments in a new light, having the story from before those stories happened, those other stories being told. It's great.
Someone made a really great point on Twitter. I think you might have liked my retweet or something about it. I wasn't my point, but somebody was, hating on the prequels again in some comment. And somebody just came out and said, shallow prequel hating is dulled critical blade. Time to retire it. Opt-in ignorance is worse than anything the prequels ever did. And they just made this list, right? And just tell me if all of these things don't make you feel something, Sayre.
Mm-hmm.
Ahsoka, Asajj,
Yeah.
Rex, Duchess Satine, Death Watch, Kenobi and Anakin, the Night Sisters, Dark Disciple, Darth Maul, Republic Commando, the Jedi Order. Those are all things that came out of the foundation that the prequel laid. So whether or not they were executed or not, it is such a brilliant piece of the story universe. And what these other creators were able to come in and mine out of that time period and turn into just absolutely inspired Star Wars stories. And inspired is like one of the highest praise that I can give to something, because it means it came from substance, and it belonged with us in the days ahead. It was something that was not this cash grab to just make something and fill in a gap, but it was inspired. There was something there that it was rooted out of, and it came with a purpose and a meaning that we needed. And I love what Clone Wars did. I know we could talk about that forever, as far as how much we love, Anakin and Ahsoka and all of that. Just chapters that if you're a Star Wars fan and you're not well versed in those storylines, you need to go back and you need to check out the Clone Wars. It not only makes the prequels better, it makes the Star Wars universe as a whole better. And even if you don't have the time, there's an abridged list. There's a condensed, abridged episode order where you don't have to watch all of them. You can watch some of the most core ones. And if you have kids, there's almost not a better tool to talk about politics and to talk about war and to talk about in a way that doesn't seem like preachy and too one-sided. There's a very balanced, there's a very way that they approach war and approach a lot of these just conflicting, really kind of hard to talk about issues with kids. And I read an article one time where a guy was just so grateful that he was able to watch those with his children, and a lot of the conversations that rose out of that. It's so worth watching. Rebels a little bit less so. It ended up being a pretty good show that I know you and I both love. Some moments more than others, but Clone Wars, especially as a whole, almost from beginning to end, especially kind of in the second season and on, is just such a good watch if you're a Star Wars fan.
It really is. It really is. I was skeptical of it because, you see animated series and you automatically connect that with, oh, that's for kids. It's a kids Star Wars show, but not even close.
A lot of people die. Clone Wars kills people like it's going out of style. Like, absolutely. Like, there is death, there is mayhem, there is dark subject material. One villain kills a lover of a hero right in front of him and then just sits back and watches him and just soaks in his reaction and just like every detail of it, and just like is fueled by the despair that character goes through. And I mean, this is a quote unquote kid show, so it kind of breaks you out of that, like, oh, well, I don't want to watch it because it's either a cartoon or because it's animated or because it's for kids. It's really not. It's some guys that came on and said, especially before the Disney purchase, with a lot of the Clone Wars stories were made before the Disney purchase. You're talking about guys that are like, love Star Wars, and they write or direct or voice act, whatever. And they came on, and this was their opportunity to create Star Wars stories, maybe their only opportunity. So these people took it very seriously, and they made some of the best characters and some of the best Star Wars moments I've ever seen were in Clone Wars.
I agree. And I think, as we wrap this up, one question that I wanted to ask you is, do you foresee any big surprises from Solo at all?
Yeah. I think that they do a good job of kind of planting some Easter eggs in. So I think there's going to be some cool ones. I think there's probably a couple surprises that they're hiding. I think really, though, I'm not expecting it to be as much of that, because it's Lawrence Kasdan, the guy that wrote the old ones, and then it's Ron Howard that's just super solid. So I think coming in and just creating filling in a solid blank is going to be what the focus of it is going to be, and executing just a really good solid chapter of Han Solo's prequel. I don't think they're going to try to do too much experimenting as much as they're just going to hit the right note and focus on hitting the right note.
That's perfect. Well, we've covered a lot today. We covered Denver Broncos' new rookie jersey numbers. We covered 3 plot-twisting players. We covered Infinity War. We covered Star Wars, Solo coming out soon. I feel like this is going to be a really great episode to look back on and kind of just see, hey, how did things turn out? What did that jersey number 55 do for Chubb? What kind of legacy did it leave? And then obviously,
And I would say that this episode in particular is maybe a good glimpse as far as what this podcast is going to be like. We are some positive Broncos fans. We like to look for things that we enjoy for those who haven't listened to the previous ones. And we like to talk a little bit of pop culture and infuse, those two together when we can. And we're going to do a lot more of that. So we wanted to give you guys a good taste of what the rhythm and the balance is. The first 2 episodes were kind of draft heavy because of what was going on. But the typical average episode is going to be much more like this, about between 30 minutes to an hour long, and talking little Broncos, talking little pop culture, and just very organically. So we're not going to force things down into too much of a structured, locked in too much to structure, but we're going to very just much free flow off of what's going on in the world, what's going on with Broncos, what's going on in pop culture, and give you guys a show that just feels like you're kind of coming home and having a conversation with your buddies.
Exactly. And I love that aspect of it. So if you missed either one of the first 2 episodes, you can find those on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Spreaker. Follow Brandon on Twitter at Epic Keckler. Follow me on Twitter at Sayre Bedinger. Follow us on Instagram. We'd love to just be part of your guys' lives any way that we can. We love this. How we connected was over Twitter. So we want to connect with you guys over social media as well. And those of you who are listening, so feel free to reach out.
I know that's an obvious thing, but it's like, if you got Bronco fan friends that you feel like would vibe with it, please share it. Let them know. Not only do we obviously want to increase the numbers in our reach, but we want to connect with people that truly treasure this kind of conversation, talking Broncos, talking what's going on in pop culture. Those are interests that cross over with any of your other buddies. Share it over. I've even got some friends that are just general football fans that like to listen to it. So share it away.
Share away. Well, Brandon, I think it would be appropriate as of right now if you signed us off with the GB squared.
Well, everybody, hope you guys have a great week. Hope you guys enjoy rookie minicamp news tomorrow and everything that's going on in your life and in the lives of the Denver Broncos. This is Sayre Bedinger and Brandon Keckler. God bless and go Broncos.